Good evening, and welcome to Post-Apoc Horse Talk. I'm your host, Galantagius, and this is my co-host, BG. Say hello, BG.
Hi there.
Before we go on tonight, as was stated previous nights before, to avoid cluttering and to make the chat more expedient later, if you could ask any questions you want to ask later into the chat, BG will compile them and we'll ask them in the Q&A section. Without any further ado, our guest tonight is a rising star in the community, being the first YouTuber I've had on the show, and being fairly prolific with his uploads, and was also mentioned by our last guest. Please welcome to the show, Forrest McGilvray.
Hi.
Welcome. How are you enjoying the night thus far?
Good.
Well, let's get right into it. So let's start off with your YouTube career. How did you get into the fan fiction reading biz, as it were?
I would say I mostly got to it through the channel called Crazed Ramblings, if you know about him.
Who hasn't heard about him is more the question.
Yeah, true. So I first heard of Followed Equestria just kind of via some pictures back when I kind of started discovering the show. And started, like, when I was looking at those pictures, I stumbled across his channel when I kind of typed it into YouTube years and years back. And I saw that he was coming out with the audiobook called Followed Equestria. And I was just kind of confused because I was like, what's this about? I didn't know what fan fiction was about at all. First time hearing of fan fiction in general. So I thought, well, click it. It's not too long. I got time. And just started listening to it from there and listened to the whole thing over time. I went on a trip and downloaded them all on my iPod and just listened to it on the go. Yeah.
I suppose then that does answer another question we intended to ask later. That's how I imagine you got into FOE in general.
Yeah. Somewhat. Yeah, for the most part.
Well, you've got a lot of stuff on your YouTube channel. A whole heck of a lot of stuff on your channel.
Yeah.
What's been the most enjoyable project you've worked on then?
I would have to say probably the Lost Audio Files project I've been doing so far. As it's the most interactive with the community, that the small little community following me, where they can come up with their own ideas, even if they have no skill in writing. They can just throw ideas at me, and then I can just kind of, in my own head, kind of stick those ideas together and make something Equestria. Of it, and then try to see if I can come up with an interesting story that's super short and tiny, so it's nice and easy to make, and then post it.
I can also see that you've got you're attempting to do Murky number 7. That first episode's a doozy, because that's a really, really thick. That could be a tome all on its own.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give us a sneaky peek about when the next episode's coming out.
I have an editor who helps me with editing. He didn't do like a ton on the first episode. That was mostly me kind of trying to figure it out. But then I met him, and online, obviously. And then I asked, hey, we got talking about him doing editing and whatnot. And I said, hey, can you edit this? Like, would you be okay if you edited this for me? And he said, yeah, of course. And so he's doing most of the editing, I would say, and then I'm gonna do a double check after. But so far I've just kind of left it on him to edit while I record over time, like just little increments every day. But as for the release date, I can't exactly give you one because it's all dependent on how my life goes and how his life goes. So I didn't give him a due date to finish it by or anything because I didn't want to like stress him out and then, have him not edit, because editing for me takes a long time because a really repetitive process. But yeah, so far he's gonna chip away at it over time. Then when he sends the little bit over to me, I'll send him another chunk, and then I'll go through that first chunk he sent, and it's gonna be kind of like just a circling process like that. But we're chipping away at it every day, but tiny little bits at a time. But I don't have an actual date in which the next episode will be released.
Okay. Speaking of projects and things you're working on, is there any projects outside of your channel that you've worked on or are working on currently, besides, I think, the storyteller?
Yes. Probably more. Probably enough projects to fill a small novel, I would say at this point.
Oh, please, we got plenty of time tonight. We're all enraptured to hear what dirty little secrets you have about the things that you've done in the past. Don't make me get the thumb screw, Forrest.
So I've worked on probably about 20 to 30 different like Halo machinimas, if you know what those are, of voice acting for either main characters on there or side characters, one-off characters. I've done a handful of a fair-sized handful of MLP projects. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of Friendship is Pandering, but I voice act Applejack on there.
I think that rings a bell, but I don't remember seeing any of it.
I've been paid for a couple jobs now, which is nice. One for a fan fiction, actually. I'll have to bring it up, but yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but I voice acted one character. It was just like 3 lines, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. As that person writes the story, he's going to ask for lines, and then he pays me the amount he does. And I've also been paid for my friend's dad's like Bitcoin website where he needed a commercial, and so I recorded a 12-minute script for him and got paid for it, which is nice. And I'm currently in the middle of some lines for an animator by the name, what is his name again? Aaron's Mind, I think. He did a bunch of Dark Souls animations back in the day, and they're really funny. And so I'm not going to give you too much information, but I'm voice acting for his next cartoon he's coming out with as I don't want to give out too much information, but as one of the characters that you'll see as they're put out.
So, yeah, keep an eye on it, and you'll see some more work from Forrest, is the long and the short of it there.
There's plenty of more groups that I'm part of that I've kind of voice act over time, and they ask me for lines every like 6 months or something. But they're not like noteworthy, to say the least. They're like small little roles that I just do for fun, just because it's fun. But other than that,
again, still on the point of projects, do you have any more FOE projects you want to give a little sneaky peek on in the near future?
Well, as Comic Sans was saying on your last podcast, I'm gonna hopefully record for his other 2 stories, 3 stories. I don't know, his
many stories.
Yeah, the little audio log stories he has. I'm probably gonna be recording for those. Not within a couple of weeks, probably, but just because I'm working on other things at the moment. But I'm going to be doing those. The editor that's helping me edit Murky number 7, I want to record his story for payment because I can't give him money, and he said he can do it for free, but I just feel bad, you know? So I was like, and the story he showed me, I was like, dude, I don't even care if you edit for me anymore. I'm just going to record this. Like, it was a good looking story. So I'm going to do that at some point. And then I'm going to continue working on the lost audio files for as long as I keep getting ideas from people. And and then continue working on the comic dub of Fallout Equestria Grounded until I run out of content for that, because the story's still going and I'm starting to creep up on it. I think it's 100 pages long so far, and I post 5 pages every 2 weeks right now. So I'm probably going to stop at about 100 pages and then take a break off that for a while until the artist creates more, pages. So then I can kind of creep up on that. And then there's another comic dub I'm hoping to do later, but it's really short right now, and he's still creating panels. So I'm gonna do it, but I don't have a due date for that. What other projects? I'd say that's about it in the more immediate future. And yeah, then Murky number 7, but that's gonna be like sporadic posts almost, to say the least. I'll pretty much put up a warning video that's saying, "Hey, it's this much done," or "This chapter's been recorded," and then later on I'll post another thing. "Oh, it's been half edited," kind of thing, and then I'll just give little information bits to tell people that it's coming out soon. But other than that, not too much that I can think of. I got a couple little other side projects going, but nothing noteworthy.
PG, before we move on to the more obligatory stuff, did you have anything you wanted to ask while we're here?
Well, certainly. After you mentioned that was your, first introduction to fan fiction at all in this fandom, well, have you been mainly reading, Fall Equestrian side stories? Have you sort of had phases where you were reading, mainline pony, non-Fall Equestrian fan fictions?
I would say it was the way I learned from getting it. I'm assuming it's later, but the way I kind of got into the fandom was just through YouTube at first. I'll explain all that some other time, but
Sure.
I started kind of discovering fan fiction after Fallout Equestria. So then after Fallout Equestria, I was like, oh, these are pretty interesting. And I started looking up certain things I was interested in at the time, like obviously more Fallout Equestria, because that was just a thing I got addicted to for a while.
It's hard to see why anyone wouldn't get addicted to this.
Yeah. Searched up like things like, alien stories, like stuff like that, and found a couple of interesting crossovers here and there, but I have a really shoddy memory, so I won't be able to remember like the first big one read or anything. But other than that, can't remember exactly.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, that's for the most part. I've read quite a few side fics kind of thing of just normal stories, but nothing like massive. If a book was too big for me back then, like years ago, I was like, ooh, that's a little bit sudden for me to get into, so I usually tried to stick with the smaller stories.
Yeah, that's understandable. Fallout Equestria stories do have a reputation for being quite the whoppers.
Yeah.
This whole fandom has a habit of making really big tomes that, if produced into books, could quite happily beat children to death. Probably beat plenty of adults too.
Yep. Well, speaking of fuzzy memory, do you do any particular works stand out in memory?
Nothing that I could even describe properly without screwing a bunch of stuff up. I've read a couple of like medium-sized, like 100,000 to 200,000 word stories, but I started getting into audiobooks when they got too large. I tried searching them up. If there's no audiobook for them, I'd usually just save the story and then keep it for later. And knowing me, I still haven't got around to reading them. And that's actually one reason why I started recording fanfics, was for other stories that I was interested in reading, but didn't have an audiobook for it. So I figured, hey, maybe some other people are like me and also want to read this as an audiobook who don't have time. So started small, recorded some audiobook. Yeah.
Any further questions, BG?
I mean, as you went on, reading Fallout Equestria, was there any, particular moment in the fiction that was memorable to you at the time?
Can't remember if this was Project Horizons or Fallout Equestria, but that scene with the children inside that, I think it was a building. This was years, but where they're all sitting in like vats, just sitting there.
That's
and
Project Horizons. I know.
Yeah,
that's Project Horizons. Okay.
Yeah.
That
Urge
scene
to
I
be
remember.
triggered, rising.
Yeah. But that scene I remember vividly. I haven't actually read all of Fallout Project Horizons yet because I stopped when Crazed Ramblings stopped, which sucks. But
if I can recommend another VA who did finish it and went on that epic, because it is an epic.
Yes,
no doubt, it's an epic. Even if I don't like it,
it is memorable for reasons.
Yes, is Visual Pony the narrator.
Yeah,
he finished it, and this is actually a general point I want to make to anybody listening to me right now. I have to stress, as painful as this idea may be, everybody needs to finish Project Horizons, even if it is bad. I need everybody in the fandom, this is me personally telling you this, to finish that story and to see it for what it is.
But you do know how freaking long that thing is.
I'm aware of the suffering I intend to cause. But I genuinely think everybody needs to finish seeing it.
Yeah. And another scene that stuck with me for the original Fallout Equestria was the moment I think Steel Hooves came into the picture, where they kind of met Steel Hooves with versing the Alicorns and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of like heavy armor and all that stuff and like deep voices and shit. So that when he came into the picture and just like blew away, or screw spoiler alerts, that story's been out for a while. He blew away one of the Alicorns with like missiles or grenades or something, and I was just like, "Ooh, I'm gonna like this character already."
My iron became the big iron.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty much like two of the iconic factions. High tech armor and weapons. The Steel Rangers and the Enclave. Got a favorite between those two?
I prefer the Steel Rangers armor over the Enclaves because I'm a fan of bulky and oversized like armor kind of thing, like compared to the Enclave's more slick but more effective armor. As much as like the Enclave's armor is like really nicely fit, it's more properly layered and proportioned. I just love bulky armor.
Yeah,
I like
the aesthetic.
I like the feeling of power that a big suit of armor gives me.
Exactly.
It makes a man with a tiny PP have the biggest PP around.
Exactly.
Oh, lordy.
But yes.
But yeah, that's just about enough for me for now.
I mean, I want to continue this point a bit further. Like, we got time. I really like the Steel Rangers more as well, mostly because, and I think everybody's going to give me some flack for this, but I think the Earth Ponies were right. I think Red Eyes was also right from the beginning about how Earth Ponies have a harder time compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, hardship does. It sure does help with ingenuity, I guess.
I mean, seriously, Pinkie Pie had to basically produce a pedal-powered helicopter out of nowhere to make sure she could fly after a Pegasus and a Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah. As for my favorite faction, well, it's the Enclave, because Pegasi rock sleek, well-layered armor rocks, and so do energy weapons. I just love them.
I mean, energy weapons are cool, but can you break someone's face with that power armor.
Energy weapons are cool and all, but I prefer cold hard lead coming out of a big barrel of a gun.
The smell of burning
kinetic
core
energy
dust.
just beats them all. Still, I'm just a fan of the sizzling disintegrations and general flashiness and, this exotic feel to the Enclave, especially the Pegasus Enclave, so, yeah.
That's understandable.
Like, that's basically what got it. That's what basically got me into playing the games after that. Yeah, I want to have something high-tech like that in the game.
Yeah.
I can see.
Yeah. Speaking of, did you get around to playing the Fallout games?
I never played Fallout 1 or 2. I've played a tiny bit of Fallout 1, but then it kept crashing on my computer, and I was like, yeah, let's not do that then. But Fallout 3, I played it, most of it. I never played it when it came out. I played it like a couple of years ago. So when I played it, it was really aged, to say the least.
Yeah.
The controls were like, there's one thing that ticked me off about it was the fact that there was no iron sights for like most of the guns.
Oh yeah, that was a bit of a bind in Fallout 3.
Yeah. So it was really kind of like, played it. I tried to power through it, but it was just, I did not like that system at all.
Yeah.
You know what you can do to actually improve your play in Fallout 3 is you install the Tale of Two Wastelands. Because what it does is it basically melds the two worlds together. Like, it adds back in, well, it adds in for the first time, iron sights for guns, because it takes all of the stuff that appeared in New Vegas, so all of the mechanics that made a first time showing in that, and then remade technically Fallout 3 in that.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, basically you convert Fallout 3 into a mod for New Vegas.
So obviously and spoilers for the game, you basically do Fallout 3 and then you can go to New Vegas. So I'm not sure that's a real spoiler. It's a mod that says Tale of Two Wastelands. Clearly one of them had to come first, and we know one of them is chronologically first.
Yeah. And just in general, New Vegas has so many quality of life improvements, weapon repair kits.
Yeah.
The guns themselves don't feel like weak sauce BB guns on that matter. Oh my goodness, that's something I remember from playing Fallout 3, how weak the guns felt. You didn't have that punch to the hunting rifle like you did in New Vegas.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And energy weapons are fixed by New Vegas, because in Fallout 3, because this was brought up by a YouTuber that, if you want to hate me for it, feel free to do so. H-Bomber Guy, he brought it up that energy weapons in Fallout 3 are garbage, because the first time you find one it's about the same as the other weapons that you will find at the same time. And frankly, it's not worth the time to even invest into it until you get to like super high levels, where you're pretty much getting nothing but plasma guns and ghost rifles and all that good stuff.
Yeah, because unlike New Vegas, you actually have plentiful energy weapon wielding enemies. The Enclave versus the Legion, who aren't exactly well known for using cobbled together plasma guns.
Oh yeah, and the fact is they give you if you get lucky, if I'm not mistaken, in the Good Springs store, 9 times out of 10, at least from when I've been playing, there's a recharger rifle in there. Or if it's not there, you can find it on a ghoul corpse on the way to Sloan. And that is really nice. If you want to play energy weapons, the game doesn't say, lol, would you like to play it with energy weapons? And be disappointed in them. But yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to add in before we try and mosey on back to my first line of questioning?
I also played New Vegas, and that was one I completed about 2 or 3 times. I haven't gotten all the endings, but I know how all the endings turn out. that was so much better of a game combat-wise because the iron sights and, like you said, the weapons felt punchy. They actually did damage. And yeah, that was so much than Fallout, in my opinion. Obviously, some people are still argue that, but
Mhm.
I wish I could have taken Fallout 4's combat system and put it into New Vegas for the most part, because Fallout 4's combat system was even better than New Vegas's, in my opinion.
I mean,
Mhm.
I
Because
don't think
weapons
you're
felt even more punchy.
I don't
And
think
they were
you're
like,
wrong in that line of in that there. I think that Fallout 4 as a game is really nicely polished, and the mechanics of it are actually really nice. The mechanics
Yeah.
of Fallout 4 are really good, but that's not the game. That's not
Yeah.
what the game is supposed to be.
Yeah, it's not really supposed to be a shooter, but
it made the shooting, like, I know it's not supposed to be all about shooting, but like it made having a sniper rifle and hitting someone at a distance felt even better because it's like body would react, the ragdoll, like everything just made sense the way the impact works, and it just made it so much more satisfying. Hit people with like ballistic weapons, and
Mhm.
it was so nice. But then Fallout 4's story lacking, and
It's
Yeah.
garbage. Like,
Yeah, it's garbage.
let's not even bandy around on this point. The story is garbage.
yeah,
Yeah. Although, forgive me, but of let's say of the games you played, 3, New Vegas, and 4, like which one was your favorite aesthetic? Including faction-wise aesthetic. Legion versus Institute versus Enclave. Like, which one would you say completely divorced from the mechanics, just from the looks and feel of it was your favorite?
like just through the you said just through the looks and feel of a certain faction I like the
Yeah,
most?
yeah. Like for example, for me, I definitely like the Enclave the most because the vertibirds and the power armor and plasma weapons were just so cool. Like for me, the Legion, for example, couldn't quite hold a candle to that, and the Institute also kind of sucked ass for me. But what was your ranking on that? Would you say?
um Out of as much as I played, I would say the Steel Brotherhood again, actually, because
Mhm.
they have the whole exoskeleton, and then you put the armor on top, and each step makes you feel like you weigh 300 pounds, but you're still moving at the same speed, kind of thing. And the Enclave as well, obviously, because it's got the same mechanic, but it just felt uh, beefier in better in every way, kind of thing. Because when bullets hit they'd actually like ricochet off you. You can hear them going like
Hmm.
"Ooh," and bouncing off in the distance, and that was just so much fun. I can't remember which power armor it's called, but the front cover of Fallout 3, I think it's the T60.
T45 is the Fallout 3 one. T60 is the Fallout 4 cover. It's
Hmm.
basically just
Okay, it's
the
the
T45 in
T60.
thick.
Yeah, I love the T60 because it just looks the bulkiest out of all of them.
I,
Hmm.
Once
I
again,
I
going back to
find it narratively problematic.
oh yeah,
Yeah, T51's also kind of a nice look. That's the Anchorage power armor
Yes,
from 3.
but it's also the most iconic power armor from the original games,
Yeah.
because T45 actually only appeared in Fallout 3, or at least it appeared in Fallout 3 before. That was the first game we saw it in.
Yeah.
T51 was the only power armor we saw outside of like Enclave stuff in the earlier games.
yeah.
And again, if I'm going to choose a power armor here, I have to disagree with both of you. I like T51 because it looks so good. It looks so good.
Um,
It's
Actually,
good.
you're not disagreeing with me. T51 is also my favorite power armor looks-wise, both in New Vegas and in 4. It just has that round look to it. I just kind of like it.
It's I like it because it doesn't just say I'm going to ruin your day. It says I'm going to ruin your day and look mighty fine while doing it. I'm going to ruin your day. I'm going to give you a taste of American steel while also looking like the most majestic thing since the bald eagle. It's an armor that screams America.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, T-45 is cool. It's kind of rugged. It looks like it will do the business. But it doesn't say America. It says, I am trying to be T-451 on a budget. And T-60, putting aside for a moment the narrative problems with it, is I'm trying to look like too much of a badass.
Yeah, I could see that. I still love the whole, like, just wearing as much metal as possible. I don't care about the looks too much. I'm like, I want to be as bulky as possible. And every step is like, will announce my presence to the people around 300-meter radius kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Him.
Yeah, plus, especially one thing that kind of always irks me when I go back to play New Vegas or 3, the Tale of Two Wastelands, is basically that the power armor isn't kind of like how the weapons are just so punchy in New Vegas, they just feel like BB guns in 3. The power armor, even the body language when you walk around in it in 4 just screams bulky, heavy, whereas in New Vegas it just looks like just regular old armor when you wear it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that movement set and everything and there's different animations and everything.
Yeah, I see that. That was mostly a limitation of the engine, which, again, if anyone's heard of this particular mod, they're looking to try and remake both Fallout 3 and New Vegas in the Fallout 4 engine. Those are still both on, if I'm not mistaken, even if the Fallout 3 one was delayed because of copyright and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That will be really fun to play those stories again in the Fallout 4 engine, because even if I'm going to say that the Fallout 3 story is not as garbage as 4, but still pretty garbage in my opinion.
Yeah.
Seeing as it's almost the same story. It's, oh no, a family member has gone away. I have to go find them.
Yeah.
That's so original. Excellent. Fantastic.
Although,
I really love that one green text post. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, bonus points for the dad being voiced by Liam Neeson.
Yeah, Liam Neeson's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a bit weird. Like, I really love that one text that summarizes why Fallout 3's story is weird, and then everybody fights over all having the same goal of turning on the water purifier, so they disagreed so heavily over that.
They just want to slap their particular sticker on it. Like, even Colonel Autumn, which I'm going to defend here at this point, he may not stand for pretty much anything, and is just the most generic-ass villain that's ever been a villain. At least he wasn't a genocidal maniac. All he wanted to do was to put an Enclave sticker on the purifier. That's it. And I think, genuinely, that the Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave could have worked together on that one. I would have, if it was up to me and I would have wrote that game, I would have put another ending saying that if you are smart, if you are resourceful, and if you decide to spare Autumn, even after his backstabbery, if you can convince him to work with the Brotherhood of Steel. Because I think that he is a person that, unlike Eden, who is a machine that is programmed to be a bloody idiot,
a genocidal bloody idiot. Yeah.
I think that would have actually expanded more on Colonel Autumn as a character.
Yeah, that he's basically prideful and arrogant, but relatively reasonable and smart.
And I think that the only way you can unlock that ending is... The way I would unlock it is that you take out Eden without wiping out the Enclave in the base. Basically, you have to either sneak through or just try not to kill anybody, or basically only use like non-lethal takedowns to get through the base. Like, get through there, disable Eden, disable his robots, then leave without killing anybody, or basically the minimal killing needed to get through.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another thing I liked about Tale of Two Wastelands, that companions could actually sneak when you were sneaking. If you recall, if you ever played vanilla Fallout 3, your companions would absolutely disregard any attempt at stealth by you, and would just immediately attack the guy you're trying to sneak up on. Tended to lead to some really awkward situations when outnumbered. Looking at you, Dogmeat.
You absolute lunatic! Why are you charging at them, you useless dog?
Dogmeat gets stuck in a door you're trying to cross. You're like, no, please, no.
I don't want to die by a mini nuke, please stop!
Yep.
But,
though at least he wasn't as bad as Waking Cloud in the Zion Canyon DLC of New Vegas.
She's not very good. Honestly, I don't bother with her. I actually prefer Follows Chalk. He's a much more interesting person, in my opinion.
Yeah, he doesn't try to constantly preach to you, but sorry, we have sidetracked badly, Forrest.
We have corkscrewed off into the wilderness with this one. Yeah, but even, like, he may be a clean slate, but he's the most interesting of all the characters, mostly because... Yeah, actually, I shouldn't answer to the chat like that, but anyway...
Yeah, what he answered was to a message in the chat saying, that the NV's courier is a clean slate in every way.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question, just because at this point. I think that the courier is better because you can insert whatever you want to be there, and that's cool. Also, the fact is, compared to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, where you are a child seeking a father and then a father seeking a child, original storytelling.
It's awful to have that hoisted on you, and just like, okay, I guess I'll have to accept that in a role-playing game. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. The New Vegas story was my favorite.
You're just an angry fucking mailman that wants to get some revenge on an asshole in a checkered suit. Like, there's actually, you can just decide to not go after the story if you want to.
Yeah.
And there's very good reasons why you would not want to do that, because, this guy tried to kill you and almost succeeded.
And is just generally a really annoying douche when you meet him.
Yeah, slippery little snake that, given the first opportunity, he will backstab you really hard.
Yeah, which is... Yeah, that's something I'll have to admit. I always felt far more of a motivation and enjoyment in finding ways to assassinate Benny, even with my weapons confiscated, than I ever did trying to find Dad or trying to find Sean. What? I have a kid? Nah, I'm just chilling around the wasteland for now.
Yeah. Also, a slight backtrack. When we're talking about our favorite factions, keeping with... I actually genuinely like the Minutemen. This is a contentious statement, because the Minutemen is incredibly boring as a faction normally. Because they're a faction that can only ever have your goals. But the thing is that I often play with so many mods that add much greater depth to the Minutemen and make the Minutemen much more fun to play. So perhaps I should preface that when you make the Minutemen more interesting than what Bethesda thought was interesting, then yes, they are a much more fun faction to play as. And I'd like to point out, they're the only objectively good faction in the game because you are a good person when you take control of them. Or you can be a good person, rather. They can be the only objectively good faction in the game.
Yeah, that's the problem with them, is that they're kind of one-dimensional, really. Like, they're basically... the one thing they are about is, keeping my neighborhood safe, and unlike the Railroad, unlike the Brotherhood, unlike the Institute, they never ask you to do things that have negative consequences for, people other than raiders or others who kind of have it coming. Like the Brotherhood has you outright extort settlements for food.
Mm-hmm.
The Railroad basically, ignores people who aren't synths. They if you go to Acadia, actually, it's also interesting where they basically say, hey, you're taking their identities from them. You're basically hurting them. That's also rambling off on a tangent here. Why I liked Far Harbor so much, because they would actually give you a clear view of hey, the Railroad isn't just good guys. They do things that are messed up or wrong. But like that, just this whole thing about, hey, I'm with the Railroad, I'm here to help you, and just this moment of, well, so what? I thought that was really nice that the DLC would go that way.
Yeah.
And the Institute, well, whole laundry list of stuff they do, basically treating people like replaceable vermin in their experiments. So if, for example, the xenophobic aspect of the Minutemen would have been played out more, giving you some sort of mission to basically make you have to decide between, like, say, the bigoted side and trying something different, to actually give sort of give more of a sacrifice to the player. Say that they could make the Minutemen more combat effective, but for that they would attack innocent synths or something like that.
Or they could do something more with the building up of the wasteland, perhaps.
Oh yeah.
Because one thing that I like to do with my Minutemen playthroughs is I like to make them actively civilization builders, but often building civilization requires that some people get stepped on along the way.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately.
What I
And
like
not
to do,
everybody who lives in the inner city there is a raider, so at some point, like those guys who recruited Kellogg in that flashback, you might suddenly hear in a recruitment quest, well, there's this family that lives on this plot of land that we'd like. That you actually would benefit from actually rejecting such quests, or would have to find some alternative solution because the people who live there to be wiped out actually aren't raiders, And sometimes you have to get along with annoying, dumb neighbors instead of just wiping them out. Just sort of punishing the player for, just going in guns blazing, fetch quest style, perhaps.
Yeah, but what I was trying to get at was something that, again, I like to do in my playthroughs, is I like to set up Thicket Excavations Correctional Facility. So what I like to do is I like to set up Thicket Excavations as a mining settlement, or rather just a manufacturing hub. So the materials go into the mine and manufactured materials come out of the mine. And the labor is all raiders and slavers and all the undesirables. They've all been...
a prison in a mine? The powder gangers say hello, but please do continue.
The idea is that they're all down there working for the betterment of the Commonwealth by producing the materials that the Commonwealth needs to rebuild.
That is admittedly something I like in Fallout 4 compared to New Vegas, that you can actually, build settlements and produce new things. Forrest, how did you install any major mods, or did you do anything with your settlements in that regard?
I didn't actually mod my Fallout 4 at all, actually, now that I think about it. I usually just kind of played the game pretty normally, but I'd get like sidetracked a lot, obviously, everybody does. But the next playthrough, if I ever get back to Fallout 4, I want to try just focusing really hard on the settlement system and see how much money I can make.
Yeah.
Pro tip, if you have the Raider DLC, that just raises it exponentially.
It
If you
does.
do the Raider thing first and then the settlements.
But anyway, let's actually get back to the questions that I wanted to ask some time back before we just went wildly veering off into the undergrowth.
I mean, it is Fallout Equestria.
Yes, we talked a lot about Fallout, so let's get back to my original questions. How did you get into MLP then? Seems like a really underwhelming question after all of that.
Yeah. So I got into MLP in the summer of 2012. So how school works where I'm from in Canada, British Columbia, or at least this one school. We have grades 1 to 6 for elementary, then 7 to 9 for middle school, and then high school is 10 to 12. And I know it's kind of weird, but so as soon as I left middle school and went to high school from 9 to 10, or grade 9 to 10, that summer, about 2 weeks in, I discovered this video, which correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's the season 2 opener or season 2 ending, when Chrysalis becomes Princess Cadence and Twilight discovers her, kind of thing. But that scene where Twilight runs up to Princess Cadence and is like, I knew you were, whatever she says years ago. I knew you were not her, like, blah, 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 and explains why. And then, her name leaving my mind right now. The Changeling Queen then says,
Chrysalis.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, Chrysalis, there you go. Then Chrysalis is like, yep, you're right. And then, like, fire erupts all around Twilight and she gets pulled under, like, the castle. That scene, like, I just clicked on that because I just liked cartoons. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that they were ponies. Like, that's how blind I was to that. Because I just look at something for its animation and its animation style. And then when that scene was done, it was like a 3-minute clip on YouTube. It then played the very last chord of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic song. It was like Friends with the pink and colorful logo. And I was like, what? Excuse me, wait a minute. And so then I got really confused. I was like, is this actually like a kid's show? So I had to check it out. And then eventually I watched an episode here and there, really sporadically between seasons 2 and I think 3 was out at that time. And then I was like, I should probably start from the beginning because one of the episodes had something where it was like kind of had a continuity thing to it. And I was like, oh, I don't know what happened. So I better start from the beginning and then make my way through. And first episode, needed to watch the second episode, first season, you know how it
So it was mostly by accident.
Yeah, it was pretty much by fruit chain that I just kind of saw like the thumbnail of a YouTube video. I think the thumbnail was Princess Cadence, but she had Queen Chrysalis's eyes and there was fire all around her. That's what caught my attention. What the heck is this? And I didn't even read the title. I just clicked on the picture and then I went to and that's it.
Well then, that's one way to get into the faction. The fandom. You could call it a faction too. But yeah. So how do you feel the FOE fandom is right now? Where do you think it's going, and how healthy do you think it is right now?
I would say it's already kind of seen its golden days, I would say. But I don't think it's going anywhere for a while. Because the show may have ended and the fandom kind of died down a little bit. But then, the next generation or whatnot's coming out in the next year or two, and another movie I've heard rumored or something. I don't quite keep up with the news very well.
Now, to be fair, neither do I, and this is my job on this show.
the Fallout Equestria fandom, though, I would say is still gonna kind of be there. It won't be like a powerhousing fandom in of itself. There's still like probably thousands and thousands and thousands of fans, but they're kind of quiet, kind of dulled down and dormant for a while. But it's still kind of producing trickling content. Like there's me, there's artists, there's other people who are also starting into recording fanfics, Fallout Equestria, all that sort of thing. So it's not like what people put is the golden days or golden moments or whatever, but it's still here and I still think it's valid for sure.
You think if a fic got strong enough to get much bigger drawing into it, do you think it's possible for the fandom to have a second renaissance?
Yes. I'd say it's like just how Fallout Equestria took the MLP fandom by storm. I always think it can happen again. Probably not quite as strong because then people will compare it to, the original and blah, 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 how that always happens with everything. Just, it's like sequels of video games. They'll always compare it to the first. But I think it could jump up, like spike up in popularity again for sure. If it's just, I don't know how, but if it's good, like a really good, and it suddenly gets popular and it meets tons of eyes, I definitely think it could spike.
Moving on to the next question then. What is the weirdest fic that you've either read privately or on your channel? You could do both if you want to.
I would say not the weirdest fic or anything, but the weirdest title of a fic that I've read and put on my channel is called Bone Daddy. But it has nothing to do with what you think.
I mean, I think I've heard of this fic. I think I'm pretty sure that Comic Sans Pony told me vaguely about this last time. But please refresh my memory.
It's the stories by Fiora the Tank Girl, and it's about
I know them.
pretty much. I think it was a like a necromancer sort of thing, but the
Bone Daddy,
yeah, the character's like 1,000 years old or like several thousand years old, and he ends up becoming a dad because one of the he's the morgue pretty much. He gets the bodies, discovers how they died, and then figures out if he can cure it for future reference. Like if it was a disease, he kind of figures out how it works, and then he's like a medical person. But then this body came in of a mother and I think a father, but the child was in that body bag, but the child was still alive. And so he's like, oh, geez, I got to report this. And the princesses made him take care of it for a long time. He got attached, and I'm not going to spoil the rest. Yeah, it's a really cute story. There's nothing bad or sexual that goes on in it. It's just titled weirdly. But as for the actual weirdest story, I haven't read nearly as many fanfics as you may think, even though I record them into audiobook. But I honestly can't really think of one because if I don't like the kind of like the picture is what catches my eye usually, and then I'll read the description. But if the description's like, oh, this is just a one-off joke thing, I'm like, it won't even name that. So it's I've read a couple, but none of them have stuck with me hard enough that it's like I would consider it the weirdest one. Okay, so I can't put one of the categories.
Well, at least from my perspective, the weirdest story I've ever heard of was Fallout Equestria Broken Steel.
I've heard of that. I haven't read it.
It's a Command and Conquer Fallout Equestria crossover fic.
Yeah, I could see why that would be kind of weird.
The thing is that the story is kind of taken as a meme within the fandom, and the person who wrote it entirely straight-faced. It's basically the room of the fandom.
Huh. All right.
He accidentally created the room for the fandom. He Tommy Wiseau'd that whole story.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's an apt way of describing it. But I mean, come on, you say that's weird. Honestly, the weirdest Fallout Equestria fanfic is Project Horizons, especially in its second half. Oh my goodness!
Wait.
Don't even get me started.
It's a pretty weird story. Yeah, not gonna lie. After
Yeah,
having gone through the whole damn thing, it is.
I haven't actually listened. Sorry to interrupt. I
Sorry.
haven't actually listened to the second half, so I know mostly what goes on, but no like spoilers, please.
I won't spoil it. I do highly encourage that you listen to the whole thing and just
Yeah, I
watch
will
as it
eventually.
descends into anime.
Oh yeah, no, I know that for the most part. It gets really crazy. Like I remember that. I've been spoiled that much.
Maybe this will be something we discuss at another time, maybe another group of guests, like a special perhaps, is what bits can we actually take away from Project Horizons as canon? Because I am fairly certain we cannot take the whole thing as canon for everybody, because frankly, it's just too insane. Just the length of the insanity, the depth of the insanity that goes on in that fic, I frankly cannot in good faith take the whole thing as a 100% accurate record. I would want that the fandom want to just break this apart and take away the more insane bits.
But yeah, what different authors consider canon of other authors' works is a little multiverse in itself.
I suppose so. But answering what Antique said in the chat, it does actually kind of go to JoJo levels of anime, but that's the thing is that I quite like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I quite like the whole thing about that. That's a level of anime I'm willing to put up with because I genuinely like JoJo. I'm thinking that it does go well beyond that. Like JoJo, as anime goes, knows when to be extreme and when not to be. It's got taste, it's got tone, it knows what it's doing. I don't think that that's the case with Project Horizons. I don't think it knows when enough is enough.
Yeah, it's that and a couple other weird aspects that get weird if you think about them too hard are just why I kind of prefer to go with fics that, don't go for that bombastic a thing, but shine in their other ways. Like there are fics that have really, really enjoyable chemistry between the characters, or that have really interesting settings and factions. So some of them are diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, before we move on to our first commercial break of the night, an advertisement by the kind folks at Sparkle Cola, let's ask one more question. What has been your favourite fic that you either read privately or on your channel, and why?
Ooh. I would have to say, as I've read in general, probably. I'd probably have to say Fallout Equestria. For
Really?
kind of reasons, but it to a point. One of my favorite ones I've recorded on my channel so far is actually Murky number 7 for the type of recording style I'm doing this time around. Because most of the time when I record first person like fiction, where it's like, first person fiction when the main character is talking, I usually just record it in this style of voice where it's just my normal voice and I record it as I'm just reading words. But this time I'm actually recording the entire fiction in Murky's voice, except for other characters Like when another character comes in, I'll have a voice for them. But as soon as it comes to the narration, it's all in Murky's voice, but like a lighter version. So it's like a mix between Murky's real voice and my voice. So it's kind of a Murky light version. But I'll still display emotion during lines. I'll still be yelling in certain narration lines. And that has improved my voice acting quite a bit just with the first chapter, because I've kind of figured out how to get the voice consistent and be able to record it and put the proper emotion in it, the meekness of Murky and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say that one is for sure my favorite. Aside from it's technically not a book or anything, or like a fanfic, but the Lost Audio Files are also super fun because I get to play different characters every single one. It's super.
This actually makes me wonder, the major challenges and, what the, audio medium allows more than the visual medium of, conveying this chemistry between characters better than one can in writing. Do you notice that for more in some fics that are more focused on dialogue between characters, like intonation and all that? If there are some subtle things that some writers pull off between the characters.
Depends on how it's written. Because if there's like a connection, like you clearly can tell two characters are kind of like relating or they like each other. If the person doesn't write the dialogue properly, it completely disconnects that.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure you put the right flavor text, I guess would be a good one to say for the most part. Because if there's no proper, like if it's just basic words being said to each other and you're like, oh well, clearly they like each other, but this is sounding pretty cardboard at this point. Yeah, it all depends on the writer. If the writer is very skilled and they want these two characters to kind of like for the audience to notice, they'll get the audience to notice some.
Yeah, because for example, that's something I see a lot in criticisms of. This is completely unrelated, but Star Wars Episode 1, like Anakin, no, not Anakin, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they've known each other for years. They probably are close. And yet, they talk completely wooden. There is no chemistry between the two. It's like they're only describing what they're doing and not even talking about their feelings, that sort of thing. Whereas in some fics, like the characters they talk like they're familiar. They don't, talk as if they are just the new rookie being assigned to something and his buddy or something,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually that would be actually interesting to see how this affects your work.
So far, I think it's affected it in a mostly positive way, I would say. Obviously, I don't know if that's actually how Murky would sound. I've talked to the author of the book and sent him like audio takes what he would want it to sound like, and he said that one sounds kind of best. But obviously, it's gonna be perfect. But it's made the listening portion, like you can just sit there and close your eyes and listen to it. It sounds believable for the most part, as if Murky is actually writing this down while talking or interviewing kind of thing in certain sections. First, it makes the sections good, and so far I've even improved it even more on the second chapter, which obviously won't be out for quite a while, but I'm recording it, chipping away at it every day, except today. I woke up really shittily today, but I think it'll get better as I go and make this story more compelling to listen to, I guess would be a good word for it. Because, if some person's just like how I'm talking now, if I was narrating Murky number 7 like this, it would sound kind of meh. You wouldn't be quite as, like, aside from the actual story itself, where you're like, I know this story's good, but if I was just telling you the story like this, it'd be kind of boring almost. So I tried to change it by giving the whole story a voice and seeing if that affects it at all.
All right, then. If there isn't anything further you'd like to add, BG, I think this is a good place to call our first commercial break.
Wonderful. Nothing to add on my end.
We'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes, everyone. Just going to rest our voices, catch a drink, and all that jazz.
Gee, Grandpa, what's that swell-looking stuff you're drinking?
Well, my boy, it's the cool, refreshing taste of Sunrise Sarsaparilla. Unlike Sparkle Cola, Sunrise always stays smooth and carbonated, and there's no risk of death by radiation poisoning.
Jeepers, that's keen.
You said it, Grass Stain.
Remember, kids, sip your Sunrise Sarsaparilla to keep you shining, sharp, and swell. It's the official drink of the Junior Steel Rangers.
Sunshine, you'll be mine, Sunrise Sarsaparilla.
And we're back. So, let's enter into our next section, which is all about, if I'm not mistaken here, discussion. So, let's start off with our first topic of the night. This is a returning topic, Red Eye's Rad Engine. We actually had an engineer come on and try to explain this. How do you think it works, as someone who isn't, as far as I'm aware, an engineer?
A Red Eye's what engine again?
Rad Engine. Or did you not get that far enough into the fic?
I have. You're gonna have to give me a reminder. That was years ago. I read it.
So, spoilers for Mr. Military here. Late in the fic, Red Eye is discovered to have produced an engine that uses rads to generate power.
Yeah.
So, in a wasteland that's filled with rads, it's a really useful idea to have a device that can just use ambient rads as a power source, or rather, you stick it in somewhere that's highly irradiated and generate power that way.
Yeah.
So how do you think it works?
So I have no idea. I'm not an engineer at all, but I'm gonna assume something to do with like what do you call that? Like kinetic energy. Since radiation is bits of atoms kind of sparking off of an object or something like that, I'm pretty sure. I'm assuming it takes kinetic energy of those atoms and hits some form of like plate maybe, and the atom won't go through, like it's a solid lead plate or something that won't allow atoms through it, and that kinetic energy with thousands upon millions of atoms just hitting it very slightly, I guess, would generate energy. Kind of like a pedal, like an electric pedal bike almost. It would just slowly, very slowly, microscopically push these little things that generate electricity, I guess. Other than that, I ain't got a...
So, for the sake of Mr. Military here, so it's not technically a reactor. Reactors exist within the universe. They use magic to generate power. What this, I think, is supposed to be based off of is a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, or RTG. To boil it down, is it converts the heat energy from radioactive decay into electricity.
Okay.
While a reactor, what it is, as BG has quite happily put towards you, is simply just a steam engine in essence. This takes the heat energy directly rather than boiling water to produce power.
Okay. Interesting.
It's apparently fairly economical, at least the real world one is supposed to be fairly economical.
Yeah.
It's just not got a huge output. It's quite low output, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more how it gets down to it, how it's supposed to work. Because obviously magic exists within the universe, and magic kind of does give you a lot of hand-waving rights over what and how things work.
Yeah. Magic is just undiscovered science.
But is it, though?
I mean, the laws of physics probably exist in Fallout Equestria. There's probably some weird thing about that planet that allows the unicorns to use the energy, right? It's like kind of like the sun for us. We get solar panels and we could turn it into electricity.
I mean, yeah, but I'm also thinking that it doesn't... I get what you're trying to refer to, that suitably advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that this world isn't necessarily suitably technologically advanced. I think this is straight up just pulling magic and sorcery. This isn't technology.
I mean, the tech level of the ponies is kind of sort of ambiguously some sort of European 20th century culture, American culture.
Yeah.
Like it sort of feels like it meanders between 1850s and 1990s technology, sort of.
Well, thing is, it's got technology from like the dawn of the Industrial Revolution right up until post-atomic stuff. All of this fits within the full Equestria timeline, seeing as they had the best part of not just 300 years of technological development, but 300 years plus probably another 100 years into the future in the space of about 30.
Seems about right.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that technology like speeds up, like exponentially speeds up when war happens. We've had 2 world wars, and we've just crazy technology in just the short amount of years that the wars have happened. We've just had a boom in technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Equestria having magic with the development of modern technology like Earth Pony's innovation on top of magical innovation, I think that would speed it up even more. 'Cause what can we do with this magic we have and combine it with Earth Pony technology, kind of mash that together and bam, science.
Yeah, I grant that. What I was kind of thinking, though, is we've advanced more in the last 10 years than in the last 200.
Yeah.
We have moved on so fast for ourselves, and there hasn't been anywhere near as many wars. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that in this circumstance, that when you are facing potentially annihilation, technology could rapidly advance, incredibly rapidly advance. But it does kind of hard to wrap my mind around just how quickly that they managed to tech up.
Yeah. I guess it's literally just magic. Like, there's not much explanation to it other than magic.
You know what?
Just
I'm going to
add
ask
it.
another question on magic. I'm going to take another one of my potential questions to ask. Magical items as commodities. Because we know magical items exist all over the place. Like, for example, all the canned food is imbued with a preservation spell, like to keep it all fresh inside the can. So long as the seal is not broken, the stuff
I
stays
thought
good.
that was.
Stays good
I
forever.
thought it was just like, normal canned stuff like we have.
Oh no, like normal. The reason why the games can get away with it is because they need you to have food in some certain circumstances.
Yeah.
But in reality, canned food does have a shelf life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Plus,
not actually that long.
Plus, I mean, to be honest, Fallout 3 and later games, they tend to kind of forget that they are quite a bit longer into the future after the bombs than Fallout 1 and 2. Sorry.
I would say with that, because some foods we have today actually can last more than 100 years.
Oh yeah,
There's a
like for
YouTube
example,
channel
canned bread can last. We don't know how long canned bread can last because
this
we've not
hasn't
actually.
expired yet.
Because the first loaves that we put in fucking cans haven't expired yet. We don't know how
Yeah.
long it can go for.
So I'd say honestly, it's like for our stuff, it all depends on how you store it, because canned stuff can go bad, but that canned stuff usually has a liquid in it of some kind. If you dry something out like pemmican and then can the pemmican while it's dry and like packed, it theoretically could have an infinite lifespan. You could throw that stuff out into space and it just wouldn't go bad ever.
Well, obviously there is then the physical limitation of the can itself, how long it takes
Yeah.
for that to rust open.
Exactly.
Which
So
I
if
think
we had
200 years actually is plenty enough time for that to happen.
All depends on the storage, though. Because if you leave a can out in the middle of the rain over 200 years, yeah, it's going to go. But if you store it inside a sealed container, like a fridge, and the nukes go off and it stays clean inside that fridge, it may be radioactive, but it's still got nothing to make it go bad. There's no germs, no
Potentially,
bacteria in there.
Yes.
So it could potentially last hundreds and hundreds of years. It all just depends on the storage when it needs to last.
But yeah,
'Cause, like,
we're
dry
talking about Fallout here, like the Fallout
Yeah.
universe. That we have to try and. There are ways to preserve food for really long periods of time. It's just that most of the time, the upper limit on the shelf span of a can is about 30 years.
Yeah.
Like 30 years in a dry cupboard is about the best you can expect.
Yeah.
Like some of the best stuff that I can see nowadays is like 10 years typically. But even then, 10 years is not necessarily the actual end of when it's edible. That's just when it's at its best. I have seen food from the 80s and the 70s which have gone really bad.
Yeah.
Absolutely rancidly bad. I've also seen food from the 90s which is still edible. I've also seen food from World War I that was still edible.
I heard recently from one of my friends, this channel tries like really old rations from like back in the Civil War.
Oh,
kind of
good
thing.
lord.
Like, yeah, and apparently like the rations he had, because it was all super dried and whatnot, so it could last a super long time. He ate it and he just said it didn't taste like anything. It was just all the flavor was gone, but it was still edible.
I mean,
So
I
it's-
would very much like to have a link to that. I think the whole chat would probably like a link to that too.
Very curious about that. I didn't.
But yeah, I'm definitely very curious about that one. But let's get back to FOE. Yeah, FOE. The reason why everything tastes fine and is fresh is because the cans are all have a minor enchantment on them that keeps them preserved, as long as the can remains sealed.
Yeah.
But the thing is that other items within the universe could quite easily be, enchanted. Like, for example, glasses, for example. You don't go to the opticians in FOE, you go to your local super duper mart or what have you, and you pick up a pair of glasses and straight away your eyesight is corrected.
Yeah.
Because magic. Because the lenses are magic.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't necessarily translate well to, selling people stuff, because we are aware that the culture in Fallout Equestria did become a lot more commercialized. Thank you, MWT. You did a lot of good work, but this is one of the things you kind of fell short on. So, how do you reconcile this fact that you can have magical items that can potentially last forever, and the people actually are actually becoming a consumer culture? You can't consume stuff that doesn't, break and become consumed.
I guess it's not even consumer culture wouldn't exist then if nothing broke. Like if the technology, let's say it was like a PC or an Xbox, and just magically it got better RAM and graphics and whatnot, and it just cleaned itself, it fixed itself, all that sort of thing, then we wouldn't have consumer culture. It would just be like a time, I guess, where
I mean,
yeah, you could literally just hand down everything at that point.
Yeah. You could just keep everything. The hoarders who keep everything, that wouldn't even really be hoarding it, that because you could just pass it on and it would just be super useful for the next generation because it just was better.
I mean, I
in
did
the
find
next-
a way that you could reconcile these two things, which are known to be a thing in FOE. Because you have magic, you can enchant things with, other side enchantments, perhaps. So, say you buy a pen with infinite ink. You can't normally sell a pen with infinite ink more than once.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You know that pens have a habit of going missing, right?
Yeah.
So what if, after a certain amount of time after being purchased, a secondary enchantment kicks in on the pen? A teleportation enchantment.
Oh.
That teleports it back to the factory.
Good old digital rights management.
Holy.
So you just think that you lost the pen and you have to go off and buy another infinite ink pen. But what you don't know is the same pen, because it's just teleported back to the factory after a certain amount of time.
I would probably say the company would get caught after a while.
Maybe, possibly.
Because people would start noticing that, like, let's say if it was a bigger object than a pen, like something more important, a coffee mug, that you're like, somebody uses that coffee mug every day. He sets it down in the same place, like clockwork, and then suddenly it's gone. Nobody else is in the house.
Oh,
probably would get a little bit confused.
I think they would rather put in some sort of,
the enchantment
planned obsolescence, or they just say it's a maintenance appointment for which it has to go in.
But the enchantment would vary depending on the object. Like, for example, with the glasses example, say you have these glasses that perfectly correct your vision no matter what they do.
Yeah.
Say after about 6 months, another enchantment kicks in, which makes you uncharacteristically more clumsy. So you're more likely to break the glasses, so you need to buy another pair.
That's Vault-Tec levels of screwing around with your customers.
Yeah, I think people would start to... I think because, at least in the world here, there's so many people that would consume such an item that they would start to catch on to something. Like, you know how whenever something's a scam, people catch on to it really quickly. When they receive the item and the item's not as they described, they're like, and then suddenly forks and torches come. If you started selling if you started small time selling an object like that to just only a couple closed customers or like a couple hundred people, they probably wouldn't notice that they suddenly got clumsier and broke it eventually. But if you gave it to millions and millions and millions of people, and people would be on the internet like, whoa, suddenly I just tripped and, broke my glasses. Oops, that's funny. And then everybody's like, wait, I did that as well. Like just a certain amount of days. And then people start to kind of put the pieces together. They'd probably think that, hey, something a little fishy's going around on here. And then the company would probably have to change tactics to switch it up. But
Obviously,
then suddenly people aren't breaking the glasses and they're like, it's because just so many heads are put together with this one product that every single flaw and every single little thing that the company did would be noticed over time. Unless it was like such a long time, like if you made the glasses break over the course of 80 years or something, then that person's probably dead and wouldn't notice, obviously. And then they'd hand down the glasses. The guy would be like, "Oh, sweet glasses, they broke. Ah, dang! I guess I gotta get a different pair. I'll buy another pair though." So I kind of think it all depends on the duration of our lives.
Well, the thing is that this isn't beyond the capacity of an intelligent group of people. Like, here's a bit of a real-world example. So, in 1924, there was a secret meeting between all of the light bulb manufacturers in the world. They all agreed to sell light bulbs that would burn out so that they would always be useful.
Yeah.
This is not beyond the possibility that a conspiracy exists within the universe to make stuff have planned obsolescence. I'm just saying that magic gives a greater capacity for planned obsolescence.
I think you here's a good example. You know the first light bulb ever made in the world, right?
Yes, that's still burning.
Yeah, exactly. I think Fallout Equestria was at that stage of making things last forever before they thought, hey, we can make money off of this and make them break on purposely with magic. They suddenly came out with all these things that just lasted forever because they needed it to do that. And then the bombs hit. And then everything that they made did exactly that. Lasted forever. So with all these, they were probably going to get into that process of being like, hey, we can make a huge fortune off of this. It's exactly like some of the vaults. The vaults, obviously, some of them are their own thing, but the vaults, hypothetically, on paper, lasted forever. They just opened, some of them opened after 200 years. Well, what happens if you had one that just lasted thousands and thousands and thousands of years? On paper, for some of them, it could do that with like recycling and all that stuff, and proper
Maintenance.
control of the population. So be a little bit odd, but hypothetically, that could be where Fallout Equestria or Equestria was at before the bombs fell, where they made everything to just last indefinitely. That's why there's still power. That's why there's still armor available. Because like even armor plates nowadays, our Kevlar plates and like hard steel plates, they actually have an expiry date of usually around 5 years. And you're thinking like, it's steel. How does it go bad? It's got like layers and layers of shit on it. But it safety wise, it expired. It's probably still effective for potentially 100 years, depending on how you store it. But safety and wise, they made it kind of expire, so you kind of have to buy another one legally. So they're not legally, if a bullet punctures through it after its expiry date, they're not legally obliged to help you, or like you can't sue them because it's an expired plate. I think Equestria didn't do that yet. They were like, we need these things to last literally forever. This war could go on for years and years. And if our stuff just starts expiring safety-wise and just in general, then we're screwed. We're going to be consuming too much money. And then the bombs hit. And then that's why everything kind of lasted for so long, because they were in that period of first discovery, like the first light bulb. It's lasted so long on. And that's what I think the point of Fallout Equestria happened. Was like that mistake.
I mean, that's a possibility. Like, I don't think that's an impossibility for the universe. I'm just thinking, most people agree that the war was a pretty long time, like 30-something years. I'm just thinking that kind of train of thought would have probably occurred to them a bit earlier on, than when you're suggesting.
Oh yeah, no, I would most likely think that, yeah, but human beings are human beings and ponies are ponies. Since it's like the first war, we've had wars all throughout our history, right?
Yeah.
Equestria, not so much, where they had like wars upon wars we have wars, small wars all the time. Equestria had like that 1,000 years of peace. Generations and generations of no conflict, pretty much, except for obviously the evil villain here and there, sorted out pretty fast. When the technological boom hit and happened, it's like some of the guns we have today, people still use that are from World War I because they were built to last. Like I don't know if it was World War I, but like quite a few of the bolt actions, like Lee Enfields, what are some other ones? I
would like to point out that weapons are not quite the same as commercial stuff.
Weapons, yeah, of course.
The military don't typically buy stuff that breaks easily or has planned obsolescence built in because they don't come back to them. Arms manufacturers make more money by making better guns, not by having guns that break. So I would argue, at least in that circumstance, it's not unreasonable to expect guns from way in the past to still work now. That doesn't strike me as unusual.
Well, the like the Sten gun, that was like, that gun didn't last. It was effective for what it needed to be, but the military bought it knowing that it wouldn't last.
I mean, they didn't
Like,
buy it at all. It was pretty much a pipe gun. It pretty much was a pipe gun.
Yeah, it was a stamped sheet of metal. It was a bang, shove a barrel on it, like the mechanics you need in it, and send it out to soldiers. But the military purchased, like, can't remember how many it was, but tons and tons of them, and they knew it wouldn't last. It was just because they needed people to have guns. They needed their soldiers to be armed to combat the full auto machine guns in World War II. And so the military nowadays, they don't necessarily buy the guns because they'll know they'll last. God knows I know enough about that, but it's like certain things will not last. That's just nowadays they are not built because, like you said, people want money and they want to do it. But Equestria could be different because this war hit so suddenly. It was like from peaceful to then they kind of graduated into war where they kind of started getting like, angry, and slowly over time it became a full-fledged war. But that could have been a couple of years into the war. And then when it's hit suddenly and they realized they needed to fight back and hard and fast was what I think was they didn't go into that mass production stage or quite enough. They wanted everything to be mass produced, but work and be effective. Like the bolt action rifles of World War I. You can still find them even used in mint condition, and or maybe not mint condition, but they still work like 100 years later, and they still fire. They're still accurate because they were made to last. Because if a rifle, they didn't know how long the Great War was going to last. They thought they were thinking it could potentially last decades and decades, and so they needed stuff to last just forever.
I mean, most people thought that the Great War was only going to last a short period of time. Like, most of the thought at the time was that the war was going to be short because most European wars at the time were fairly short, like never really more than 5 years in length.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why the 30 Years' War and the 100 Years' War are notable wars, is because they were particularly long.
Yeah. But that's because, like, we have had a couple wars back. And so, but they didn't last very long. Like you said, you're exactly right on that. But when this war came along, they started to realize that it was like the Germans their technology is jumping up way faster, higher quality, pretty much everything. And they had great, like, quality and everything worked to last. And so the British needed to kind of step it up. So they kind of built these, just like the Germans had, nice bolt actions rifle that just worked. They weren't necessarily the most accurate or anything, or like the greatest thing ever, but they lasted and they worked in the conditions that they needed them to be in, which is war. Really shitty war. I think,
I mean,
like,
there is an example.
I understand.
Sorry, you can.
Oh, the Equestria War lasted 30 years. So yeah, eventually I think you're right that some things would have been like, hey, we'll build these not to last so we can make money off this since it's going on for so long.
I mean, again, I'm not talking about like military equipment because, as I mentioned, military equipment doesn't tend to be disposable. There is an exception for this. The Soviets, for example, they did put planned obsolescence into their equipment because they were aware that they were aware that their tanks wouldn't last that long. They calculated that the parts would typically last a little bit longer than the average length of time it would take for a tank to break.
Yeah, exactly.
Either through enemy action or through generally stuff wearing and tearing and coming apart. That was the only example that I can think of planned obsolescence ever being used in the military. People can correct me if I am wrong, but typically military technology doesn't tend to do a planned obsolescence. It's very much a civilian market thing, because the thing about the civilian market is that
more consumers.
Yes, you're looking for volume of consumers typically, not necessarily selling to them a quality product.
Yeah, like the Apple iPhone.
Let's not bring too many big examples in, because I think that's going to be a hot button issue somewhat.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I see what you mean. And so the civilian part of the Equestrian War, they built things not to last because they could make money, like the big consumers, like you said. But then the military side of the Equestrian War, the reason why a lot of the equipment, the military equipment, lasted so long is because it was built to last, while the civilian side of things, like money back then,
I
it's
imagine
totally useless because it collapsed. But
I
all the civilian
imagine
stuff like
that when Applejack took over and became the Ministry Mayor of the Ministry of Wartime Technology, that she was probably the loudest voice pushing for quality. Because
oh yeah,
it would not surprise me that she, being someone who believes very strongly in Earth ponies being the best, and she's not wrong, changed my mind.
Yep. Yeah, change your minds. They're the best. Continue.
Pegasi!
Changed my mind. Anyway, as she probably stepped further and further away, or was rather pushed further and further away, I imagine that the quality standards did start to drop, because obviously after the assassination attempt against her, she'd want to do less and less with this, let's be honest, nest of vipers that is the Ministry of Wartime Technology.
Yeah.
So as the King of Cardboard has said, yeah, you have to either be mighty ballsy or be really convinced you can get away with it to sell them shoddy guns if you have a military backing you to produce a product. Because you have a license to print money there.
But I'd say what can cause that for people to produce shoddy military stuff is desperation and mass production.
Oh yeah, desperation and mass production can definitely have a part to play there. But I would still argue that military technology is one of those few exceptions that you cannot really get away with having planned obsolescence in military gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead they can inflate their prices, especially with contracts. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right about the planned obsolescence part, but I think the thing is like a lot of this military equipment that's not supposed to go bad goes bad. They just didn't know it would. They're like, oh, this stuff will last forever, and then it doesn't. They're like, oh, well, we genuinely didn't actually know that. It was not planned. So it doesn't like invalidate your point. You're right about the planned obsolescence shouldn't and usually didn't exist in the military. But for Fallout Equestria, I'm curious what would, if they did that for the military. Like you said, Applejack started getting further and further away. So I'm curious like what certain technologies were made that actually did have a planned planned expiration date for that when she kind of backed away and the quality started kind of drop. I'm curious what certain like power armors or weapons that were made then actually just don't work anymore 200 years later, even from just being in a box.
I mean, that's a point that Antique brings up, that it's quite possible that planned obsolescence doesn't necessarily mean to be the item as a whole, but maybe parts in the whole that fail after a certain amount of time to make sure that you've got a constant market for at least the parts.
Yeah.
But anywho, let's move on to our next question. That is... You know what? That question I don't think is going to be all that interesting. So let's actually move on to my next one. And go for unusual magic in FOE. So we know that magic obviously exists, and we know that since then, unusual magic has somewhat been drip fed into the universe. So, really, in your opinion, where do you think the line should be drawn on that kind of stuff? Obviously, Fix will obviously throw in some unusual magic in there. Just trying to think of a precise example. I mean, Project Horizons brings up pregnancy magic, which seems to be unusual, at least from my perspective. But yeah, that is a thing there. So yeah, opinions.
All depends on the magic. Once again, we don't exactly understand it because magic. Magic is magic and it kind of weird. But all depends on if you're doing it for kind of like the right reasons, I guess. Like some magic can be like really like that whole pregnancy magic. That's kind of strange, but imagine if you suddenly like you couldn't populate because of some reason, let's say, but you could populate using that magic. Is that a bad thing? Or is that just survival instincts?
No, not necessarily. But the pregnancy magic that is specifically referenced in Project Horizons is like a surrogacy spell.
A what?
A surrogacy spell.
Okay.
So it basically allows you to teleport basically a foal and transplant them into the womb of another person.
Oh, so it's not just creating, voila, I'm magically pregnant. It's kind of taking someone else's foal and giving it to another person. Pony.
Yeah.
For the most part, is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. So obviously there is a bit of science that's mentioned in FOE about this, that it works a lot better if you have a blood relative take the surrogacy for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit not great.
I guess it really depends on, does it really serve the narration of the story beyond just, hey, look what cool MacGuffin my protagonist found?
It does have a bearing on the story for those who want to go through Project Horizons. It does matter. I'm not going to give a spoiler as to how it matters, but it does matter.
Oh boy.
So
yeah.
Well, obviously, like Sombra kind of magic exists. I would argue that's a bit unusual. How do you think that kind of fits in with FOE?
I'm no author or writer, so if it works for the story and adds lore to something, like interesting lore, and it's not just a one-off thing that's like, hey, this thing happened and it progresses the plot and then they totally discard it later. Like, as long as it kind of fits with the, let's say, for example, the technology and the magic system and all that, and it's not just something they pulled out of their ass and said, hey, this is a thing that progresses the plot, and then they threw it in the garbage after. I think, honestly, whatever works, as long as it kind of has its purpose in the universe that.
I mean, that is, I think, a fair position to take, I would say. That as long as it's valuable to the story, it doesn't necessarily matter that it's weird and wacky and out there.
Yeah, as long as it fits. At least fairly well. Doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah.
BG, could you be so kind as to deal with that, please?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's move on to the next topic, because it seems that most of what we could really realistically come up with has been done for this. So let's move on to Raiders. More specifically, the end game for them. How is it supposed to end for them? Because depending on who you ask, the question of what happens to them does matter.
I would say it all depends on like when the end game for the Raiders kind of happens. Like, if I remember correctly in the story, it's like Raiders kind of happen because it's kind of a disease of some kind.
In Project Horizons,
yes, in Project Horizons specifically.
So at least in that circumstance, Project Horizons, some Raiders have basically equine spongiform encephalopathy.
Yeah.
So they have mad cow disease for horses.
Yeah. It all depends on what kind of Raiders, I guess. If they're just like bloodthirsty Raiders that just want to eat people, then yeah, there's probably not much of a real end game other than dying, I would say.
Yeah.
But for certain Raiders that are like Raiders because they have to do it to survive, it's kind of like someone who's been stranded on an island for so long, and just to survive, natural instincts kicked in. Let's say they had to eat somebody, or like a corpse. Like, they didn't kill them for it, but had to eat a corpse. They should still be, like, depending on the situation, obviously, it should be investigated. But if they did something that looks horrible on paper, like, holy crap, that guy ate a corpse, that's disgusting. But if he did it for just basic human instincts of survival, just to live, then it suddenly doesn't look all that bad, as much as it's still a corpse. But that if you did it to survive and you're still kind of like a normal person, you don't crave flesh or anything from then on, and you can be integrated into society pretty effectively, then I think that is kind of what should happen. Obviously, potentially decades and decades or hundreds of years in Fallout Equestria, when civilization slowly kind of building itself. Other than that, I ain't got much else on that subject. The end game is either just, if they're crazy and can't be fixed, then they're not exactly ponies anymore. They're more animals than anything. But if you're a raider because you need to survive, like other raiders gave you a choice. You either join us or die. Obviously, that person's a raider. Instinct on survival.
So, well, this also brings up a thought that K-Cat had a somewhat, I think probably the fairest way of putting it, a simplistic view on raiders. That they're just bad, and that's it. Nothing else to say about them. Raiders are bad people, and they're bad, okay?
Yeah, I mean, at least Fallout 4, for example, had a bit more depth to the Raiders. You know, you had the Libertalia Raiders, who were basically Libertalia, who were basically ex-Minutemen who just simply had nothing else to do after the Minutemen just completely fell apart, you know,
and
stuff like that.
They wanted to continue being Minutemen,
but they were running out of food.
They ran out of food, and nobody was kind enough to return the favor for the years of service that they gave.
Yeah.
So
people had lost faith in them, so yeah.
At least in that circumstance, this is not victim blaming here, because let's be fair, everyone who lived near them became the victim of these raiders, but that could have been entirely avoided by just a little bit of charity. It seemed that the suffering inflicted by those particular raiders could have been avoided.
Yeah.
As opposed... Sorry, carry on, make your point. I'll carry on mine in a second.
Yeah, that it's the Raiders kind of become Raiders for a reason. There's not just like a Raiders are, K-Cat said, Raiders are bad because they're bad. That fits for the story on like surface level where you're like, oh, Raiders are bad. They're trying to kill me. It's simple. I defend myself and they're no more. But like you said, where it's like those Raiders only became Raiders because negligence from the people around them, or not negligence really, but like you said, charity or lack thereof.
Callousness, yeah.
Yeah, that could have been potentially, they may not have became Raiders and they may have been normal people after, and then just they made a small town or something. But it's kind of from the actions around the people that turn them into Raiders, where they're like, if some person like is trying to just go to door and ask for like spare caps or bits of food to survive, and everybody keeps saying no and no and no, it eventually just comes down to, all right, I'm gonna have to kill someone for food to survive, and that's instinct at that point. So Raiders don't just, they're not like, bam, we're Raiders suddenly. They usually have some form of reason, either like the disease or they have to survive. It's just instinct. No one's just going to be like, well, I can't get food from anybody or money. I'm just going to lie down here and die.
Yes.
Your body kind of takes itself over and is like, I need food. I will get food. That is like priority suddenly.
This is as opposed to the Raiders of Nuka World, where the Raiders of Nuka World are not even in the slightest. So my first blush at the Raiders of Nuka World, so you got the pack. At first, they seemed pretty okay. They seemed like just like party raiders. They liked their drugs. They liked having fun, fighting, stuff that most people could get behind. Then I discovered the fuckery they did, that they hid in the basement. That they fed all their animals human corpses. They keep slaves in horrible conditions, and just they were, at that moment they became objectively terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Carrying on, what was the stabby ones?
Disciples.
The disciples. They were just bad to begin with, and they became worse. They were just they were just terrible. There was nothing redeeming about them. They were just terrible. Like at first, they just looked like horrible stabby raiders, and the more I dug into them, they stayed horrible stabby raiders that now are manipulative and terrible. They're just bad. And in every playthrough, they're the gang that gets cut out of the picture, as it were.
Yeah, despite them having objectively the best item reward, they are simply the worst.
And then there's the operators, which, on the face of it, seem like the most reasonable of all of them. They act with a level of civilization. They seem reasonable. Like, you can talk to them, you can get them to work with you much more reasonably than anyone else. They respond to stuff that normal wastelanders respond to.
Yeah, they do mercenary work and all that. Yeah.
But then when you start digging into them, they're even more messed up than potentially the disciples. They are actively working against free will itself. Now, me personally, I don't believe that there is such a thing, but a game has to have agency, so it takes the assumption that there is free will. And that is objectively bad. In a world where that such a thing exists, it's bad.
How did I've never actually played the DLC, but how did the Raiders become the Raiders? Like those certain groups, is there any story on?
There is a bit of story, but
people?
I never actually got a full picture on it. I only ever understood their motives for doing what they did.
The operators were basically two spoiled kids from Diamond City starting their own gang, simply because they decided, we're not just going to live this pampered life given to us by our parents, but we want to, we deserve more, so we will take more by force and by skill. The pack? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, that's just a comment. It's just the reason why they became raiders is because of bad parenting.
Yeah, basically.
Honestly, though, they're the gang that has the most potential to be redeemed.
Yeah.
Pretty much they're the only gang that has the potential to be redeemed, because they can be redeemed into simply a mercenary company. If they drop their fuckery with dabbling against human free will, and they just take on jobs for money, the operators can be rehabilitated, as it were.
Yeah. I'm not sure about
said about the raiders, about the disciples and the pack.
Yeah. Not sure about the pack's origins, but the disciples were basically a regular old raider gang, but Nisha, the leader, was taken in by the leader of that other gang, then got double-crossed by him, but she survived, and then she went to an extreme view of survival of the strongest.
She went to an Ayn Randian level of survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
So that old raider group, how did that is there any backstory on the old raider group, how they became raiders?
Unfortunately, no.
Damn.
Yeah.
So I guess so far then, they're just shitty people because they're shitty people so far.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and the pack are just, they listen to hedonism, and when you only listen to the id, only listen to your hedonistic desires, that's when you get cannibalism, pedophilia, and a whole lot of unsavory things. Not that those were really shown in game, but it's kind of, when you turn off those mental filters, they are there for a reason.
Yeah.
The thing is that the pack are barely controlled monsters. They march to the beat of the strongest, which is their leader. That's it.
Yeah.
Unlike
the others, at least, though, they have this rule of, instead of killing someone, you basically go for non-lethal humiliation. Well, unless they're the slaves, and then you just secretly feed them to the animals. But yeah, so much to that. They're a bit hypocritical.
Yeah. But the thing is that the only way to rehabilitate a group like, say, the pack is to have someone, basically successive leaders that can slowly move the group away from that behavior.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of planning, and that can be entirely undone by one bad leader or a coup.
Yeah.
So the disciples are entirely unredeemable.
Yeah.
The operators can be redeemed if there's enough incentive to do so. The pack can be redeemed over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they all are terrible people in their own right. There's no good ending to Nuka World unless you are the Minutemen and you're going to just murder them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm glad they added depth to them, but I also would have preferred a way to slowly rehabilitate at least some of these groups.
Yeah. Or maybe you can start your own raider gang, and then you can be the leader and show them good things, like sparing somebody's life, and they're like, interesting, didn't know you could do that. And then slowly start maybe giving charity out and stuff like that, and eventually your raider gang just becomes the Minutemen eventually.
I don't think you can ever reach the Minutemen, at least not in one generation. That seems like an unreasonable goal. They set themselves up on a moral paragon.
What I always do is basically, with the Raiders, you can have a settlement-like system, and it's actually possible to fully unlock all the Raider perks without killing any innocents. It's basically, you are forced by the game to extort one farm, but other than that, I always force my Raiders to farm. Of course, that decreases the happiness, but somehow an impish part of me enjoys forcing my Raiders to farm crops exactly because they hate it and complain to me. it just fills my sadistic glee to forcing raiders to peacefully grow their own food. And
fact,
to yeah,
like one of the mechanical problems I had
they get the drug dispensers to keep them happy instead. So yeah, I basically am a guy who keeps his raiders high, but hey, they're raiders, so who's going to complain about me keeping them addicted? They joined just to be enslaved, but hey, if I wouldn't enslave them, they would literally be raiding and robbing people. So I have slaves who deserve it.
I mean, for me, there's a mechanical problem with the whole raidery business, is that for it to actually be any fun for you to actually, subjugate settlements, you actually have to build up those settlements to begin with. You have to do at least a partial Minuteman run to build up the settlements to make them even worth taking over.
Yeah.
And that's just insane levels of masochism there. Like, you've already spent X number of hours building the Commonwealth up to being a success story, and then you come along and fuck it over yourself.
Yep.
Why would you do that as a sane person?
Yeah, it's really the Raider DLC really favors, stopping the playthrough you did beforehand and doing a fresh playthrough, because it really favors, everything you do before meeting the Minutemen.
Which is why, in my honest opinion, it didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
What it should have done is it should have basically given you another ending.
Yeah, basically.
So the way I would have done it is that you have the Raider quest line, which sets you up to take over the Commonwealth, all the settlements that currently exist. So all the ones, like the actual settlements, like the ones that were in pre-built, like you take over Good Neighbor, and you take over Diamond City, and you take over the combat zone. What else? You take out all the big Raider gangs, like you take out Slag, you take out
Red
Turret, the Libertalia, Tower Tom. All those big raiders, you take them out of the picture, and you basically put their gangs to work working for you as like vassal gangs.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
And as you progress down the main story, you can use the great amount of connections and assets that you've put into place by taking over the Commonwealth as the Raiders, basically forcing the Commonwealth to fix your problems for you.
Yeah.
So, like, you enslave Sturgis and get him to do it. You take out the railroad and take Tinker Tom and get him to work for you. You find one of the great minds of the Commonwealth and you make them fix your problems for you.
Yeah. Plus, imagine having a Raider ending to, busting the Institute. Instead of blowing it up, you just turn it into a Raider den.
Yeah, like you basically... You take out the Brotherhood of Steel, you hijack Liberty Prime and get Liberty Prime to break into the Institute for you. And, you take over that way. It becomes your new headquarters, and you enslave the surviving scientists down there too.
Just make sure the pack don't waste all those smart scientists you shot feeding them to the guerrillas.
Like, there's something down there for all of the gangs, like new poisons for the disciples, new chemicals for the operators, fucking resurrecting old fucking animals for them in the bio labs for the pack.
Yeah, they would definitely be happy to have synth gorillas, as many as the machine can churn out.
Yeah, I can imagine spray-painted synth gorillas within pack colors, just chemmed up to the nines and just thrown at their enemies.
Oh yeah, because because you didn't have the DLC. The pack likes to. They're basically furries who like to spray paint everything in vomit-inducing yellow, pink, and purple colors.
Oh, good.
So yeah, that would have been pretty fucking awesome in my opinion if you had a Raider ending that. If you wanted to be a totally terrible, awful person to the Commonwealth, you can finish the game as a Raider.
Yeah, and it would especially be funny to have some sort of ending where Sean asks you, why? You could have done so much good as the Institute director. Instead, you go with these disease-ridden raiders and basically give you like 3 options, sort of each reflecting one of the raider gang's ideologies. Like for the pack, hey, I didn't have the little brat to take care of anymore. I just decided to party. Something like that.
Or like have some kind of joke ending where you take a sharpened turd and stab your son to death with it.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like the unhygienic pack.
I mean, that would be a funny joke ending there.
Yep. Crossing the line twice.
There is a mod that actually does add in a bunch of Raider content for those who are interested. I believe it's Sim Settlements Conquest. It adds in a whole new Raider dynamic to the game.
Nice.
But anyway, I think we've actually been dwelling on the discussion part for quite a fair while. So let's call another short break. Now here's the advert for Sparkle Cola. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Hope you enjoy the ad.
There's a reason Sparkle Cola has remained Equestria's most popular beverage since it was first introduced to the public. Not just its refreshing taste, but also because Sparkle Cola uses only the finest equestrian ingredients. And we add just the faintest hint of magic for that refined flavor you can only get from an ice-cold Sparkle Cola. Because we're a company you can trust, ran by real equestrians, you can be sure that Sparkle Cola's spectacular taste just can't be beat. And for every Sparkle Cola you buy, 1 bit goes to supporting our mares and stallions in uniform. So sit back and enjoy the great equestrian taste of Sparkle Cola. Sparkle Cola. What you want is a spark.
And we're back. So, carrying on. We only had the one question tonight, so if there's anyone in chat that wants to ask any more questions, please feel free to ask them now. We will answer them. But the one question, if you'd be so kind, BG.
The question from the audience was, do you guys like NV New Vegas or 3's take on the plasma rifle, gameplay-wise, or 4's where you can make it fully automatic? Well,
I mean,
I'll let you two say your piece.
Forrest, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I don't use plasma and laser weapons in video games very often, but the amount I have in number 3, the very limited use I had in number 3, and the decent use I've had in New Vegas, I liked the take, but it felt very limited compared to the ballistic weapons you could have in said games. Like, with ballistic weapons, you can have, like, a shotgun, a machine gun, and all that. But I mean, there is attachments, if I remember correctly, for the laser weapons in the old game, correct?
There is, yes.
But not, like, a lot of... There was, like, a multi-shot one that turned it into a shotgun. And was there anything else? I
believe for like the laser pistols, a couple of mods. One added iron sights to it, and
yes, with the laser pistol. Yes.
The other two added improved the damage and put a recycler on it.
Yes.
Okay. So in Fallout 4's take, the laser weapons, for one, the combat system was better, so it felt more punchy. But the attachments you could put on, like the full auto, was really just fun. Yeah, I didn't like how it didn't have like an overheat system though.
And lasers had recoil, yeah.
Yeah, that was also a weird thing.
Lasers should not have recoil.
No.
Like plasma, that should have recoil because that has mass. Lasers have effectively no mass.
Lasers and the plasma weapons, full auto versions, or even some of the high shooting, I think they should have had some form of like overheat system. Not like a major one that makes it super annoying to play, but just something that you kind of have to maintain your heat. And maybe in accordance having like bigger magazines or something. But they were personally more fun to use in Fallout 4 just because they felt better, like gameplay wise, comparably to the older games. But that's because it's a newer game. So that's my bit, I guess.
For me personally, in a way, I did kind of like how they did it in earlier Fallout games because energy weapons in general were a massive step up in the world. The moment you have even just one energy weapon in Fallout 1 and 2, the world just becomes your oyster, effectively. There's pretty much no enemy that can stand up to you, typically. Not unless you're getting into, like, really high-level mutants and, like, legendary enemies. So, in that circumstance, 1 and 2, energy weapons were really cool because they were always a notable improvement over anything that you could have had before then. 3, they were just trash.
Yeah.
But pretty much all the guns were trash. They were just particularly trash because
no ammo, did usually less damage.
No ammo.
Couldn't repair them as much.
Yeah, they were just hot garbage. They were hot garbage until you got like to super high levels and you had like Enclave stuff. And that was because you had the Enclave stuff to repair your weapons and put them in decent condition. Then they suddenly became good. But that was only depending on how long you took, mid to late game stuff.
Yeah.
I would argue in that circumstance you actually had an overabundance of energy weapons in that circumstance. Suddenly, everyone and their fucking dog had a plasma pistol coming out of there everywhere.
Indeed.
Because you, as the protagonist, kill Enclave by the dozen, and you sell off all their plasma weapons, and yeah, now everyone in the Wasteland has a plasma gun. They're useless. I say useless. They're worthless at this point.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like the common pistol you find on the ground, even though the technological difference is massive. You're like, oh, gunpowder gun or plasma throwing pistol, but they cost the same. What?
Yeah,
because you completely devalue the local economy. But the game doesn't actually model that, but it would have modeled that if it was sensible, because there is going to be a glut of energy weapons in the market all of a sudden.
Yeah, I will have to begrudgingly say, I guess the Legion is the less problematic faction gameplay wise to go up against, since they don't really have high-tech gear suddenly to make you rich and everything.
I mean,
they just still have throwing spears and...
Well, the most advanced stuff that they have is the thermic lance, because I've definitely seen those being used by the Legion. And I've definitely seen chainsaws being used as a weapon by the Legion.
Yeah, and the 45-70 brush gun and stuff. But yeah, my take on the energy weapons and guns... in Fallout 3... they were, discounting the DLCs that gave you the friggin' alien weapons and such. Yeah, the only really good one was the unique plasma rifle you got from Harkness, and otherwise...
That was pretty awesome, because when you can get that in the game, it is going to be straight up the most powerful gun you're going to own.
Yeah,
you are going to kick ass and take names with that gun.
But I'm going to be completely blunt. I just took Iron Fists and I played the entire game with my bare hands. Bare hands were better than the fucking guns.
Fucking eat fist, fuckers!
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious towards the end of the game, sneaking up on Enclave soldiers in full power armor and basically just stealth killing them with my bare hands.
You just imagine their helmet, break your wrist, but their head explodes. You're just like, I can keep going.
Yes. Roses are red, violets are twisted. Bend over, bucko, you're about to get fisted.
Exactly, pretty much. So yeah, I'm just completely discounting Fallout 3 here because, well, the weapons were trash. The DLCs just completely got the difficulty on whack. You could have like 85% damage reduction. So yeah, onward to New Vegas.
New Vegas did it better, much better.
Yes.
Like I said earlier in the show, the weapons, you could start off the game using energy weapons and you wouldn't be at a significant disadvantage. You can do that.
Plus, energy weapons they were an interesting contrast to guns, where like you could put suppressors on some of your guns and have stealth kills, whereas energy weapons were always loud, but for that you had to have a really good critical chance with them, so I was addicted to melting my enemies into goo or turning them into ash piles, and so I really loved going for crit builds with energy weapons. I just so loved it. And another thing that was really instrumental for this, but also for making me appreciate guns more in New Vegas, a lot more than in 4, was the ammo system. You could optimize and overcharge and recycle energy ammo, so it was a lot more convenient to be able to recycle your energy ammo, but you didn't have the variety of guns. You had mentioned machine guns and shotguns, but one thing you forget there is that energy weapons entirely lacked the hollow point and armor piercing concept, and hand loading was also something that, on my first playthrough I didn't even know you could hand load ammo, and then on my second playthrough and ever since then I further explored those mechanics and actually liked hand loading like hollow point 9mm against Cazadors. Super dangerous, but they have 0 armor, so the secret Achilles heel against them is to use hollow points and shotguns. And suddenly,
the moment you have and stay back, Cazadors become actual child's play.
Yeah. So
they're not even a threat anymore. You just go, blam, oh no, you're on the floor now, you useless insect. You are now beneath me. Blam.
Yeah. But yeah, New Vegas was really my favorite weapon for energy weapons. My favorite game for energy weapons, because plasma weapons weren't simply a straight upgrade to laser weapons as they were in Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, you used up the same amount of ammo, but they just had half the clip size, but you did like more damage. Whereas in New Vegas, you had a trade-off. Plasma weapons used, 2 units of ammo per shot, and so you had, nominally the same magazine size, but you burned through that at twice as fast. Plus, plasma weapons also had a higher crit chance, so you had a higher reward if you could manage to consistently hit your target, but of course, with that projectile travel time, that was difficult. So, in short, laser weapons were my favorite thing in New Vegas.
Laser
as
weapons
well
are
as
fun.
Yes. In 4, I kind of hated how they made plasma weapons a straight upgrade to laser again, and gave them a separate ammo pool, that you needed this rare plasma ammo instead of fusion cells.
Yeah, and what I did like was the customizability of it, because you could have, if I'm not mistaken, a plasma flamethrower if you had a plasma gun.
Good.
That was pretty fucking rad. Not gonna lie, that was rad.
Yeah. And speaking of stay back, laser and plasma weapons were some of the very few weapons where you could abuse the definition of sniper rifle to basically have a shotgun with knockdown. Basically anything with a non-automatic receiver and a scope on it and a rifle grip counted as a sniper rifle for that knockdown chance. But as you know, with critical hits in New Vegas, this goes per projectile. So if you then make it a shotgun, you would suddenly have, and stay back, basically, a perk that would allow you to knock enemies down with a shotgun and with a high percentage chance. This is only possible with the combat shotgun, the laser rifle, and the plasma rifle. There's no other shotgun that lets you put a scope on it.
Welcome to the world of Bethesda games, where shit is broken and nobody notices.
Where we make a game and don't test it.
Yeah.
It just works.
But yeah, it's just Fallout 4. I mean, the gunplay is better, but I kind of don't like how well Skyrim-ified it is, in that you basically just have this infinite, level cap, and the enemies just get bullet spongier with every level, basically. Like at least New Vegas sort of had a power level cap there, that you just didn't infinitely get better. At some point, you hit level 50, you were max level, that was it. And the enemies would just hit a certain maximum strength, and even then, that was it. Whereas in 4, you really notice how bad critical damage gets, for example, because sneak attacks, oddly enough, of the two things that were overpowered in New Vegas, sneak attacks and criticals, they decided to nerf the crits, but keep the sneak attacks by making the sneak attacks, multiply your damage so they would always be strong, whereas critical attacks would always have a solid numeric value added on, so they became useless after level 30. So yeah.
Well,
either way, it's just energy weapons. They are somewhat mediocre in Fallout 4, especially because the hard-hitting Raider DLC doesn't give you any upgrades to energy weapons, especially if you go with the operators, and all silenced ballistic weapons do a flat plus 25% damage. It completely robs you of any reason to ever use energy weapons.
Again, Bethesda.
Yeah. So yeah, energy weapons, yes, but only in Tale of Two Wastelands, so that you can have, the energy weapons of New Vegas, and you can have the energy weapons of the Wasteland, with the quality of life improvements of New Vegas, such as, the jury rigging perk. That's one of the single favorite things of mine about playing Fallout 3 with New Vegas' game engine. I can finally repair my shit.
Indeed. Well, in the absence of any further questions from the audience, I suppose this is the end of the show.
Can I throw in a question?
Sure. Feel free to ask any questions. Again, we got time still.
In a practical use for modern day today in our world, how effective do you think laser weapons and plasma weapons, if we could harness plasma and make it a projectile, how effective do you think they would be used? Do you think they would be too expensive, or do you think they would just be not efficient enough?
So,
nothing really beats good old kinetic projectiles. If you're talking about man-portable weapons, like I think for infantry, you're just still going to see rifles.
Yeah,
and,
so the way I'm looking at this is... So someone did the numbers on this. I believe it was Austin from the Shoddycast, and then, the Game Theorist as well, who took the time to calculate how much energy it would take to melt a person. Because this is something that a plasma weapon should be able to do. Not necessarily always, but should be able to do. The amount of power it would need is astronomical. The thing is that the amount of power it would need to do that would pretty much do it all the time. So it's either you have some kind of scary amount of power coming out of it, like Three Gorges Dam levels of power coming out of it, which is not impossible, because obviously within the Fallout universe they harnessed microfusion, so we would need to do the same thing here. We'd need to harness microfusion to power these weapons, unless they were basically weapons with their own devoted reactor on like ships or like in place defenses. But yeah, it would be absolutely terrifying to behold these weapons. They would hit a target and turn it into a puddle. It would basically, the way that nukes changed the game when it came to warfare, this is what this would do. It would make warfare functionally impossible at sea. Because if one person has a plasma ship, they can just destroy your entire navy in short time if you don't have one. Basically, it would open up the USA to being invaded. That's how much of a game changer plasma can potentially be.
Yeah. But what happens if, like, because obviously it takes a lot of power to melt somebody, yes. But what happens if you made like a small version of like a plasma rifle where it shot like bits of plasma about the size of like a normal bullet, and like roughly maybe slower velocity, but like kind of the same sort of projectile speed, impact, all that stuff? Do you think that would be more efficient than bullets?
No, absolutely not.
Plus, it would also probably be blindingly bright, so really, you'd only use it on unmanned vehicles or something that wouldn't be blinded by it.
True.
So if it was firing a projectile that small, it would have to have a lot of... Basically, to make it deadly, since plasma does have some mass, you would still need to ramp up the energy quite substantially, even more so than the bigger plasma gun, to actually make it effective, make it even do harm to someone.
So yeah, good old guns. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
so
true.
Right now, we can fire rings of plasma, as King Cardboard has said. So they're really short range, like super short range, because the problem with energy weapons is they lose their energy to the environment very easily. So to counter that, you'd have to bump up the energy substantially to make that loss less of a problem. And obviously, there's a lot of fucking science in this that I don't fully understand as someone who tries to understand science and has taken a personal interest in this sort of thing. And frankly, the amount of energy that you would need is frightening to make this work. laser weapons would be easier because lasers don't work in the same way as plasma would. It is potentially easier to have a beam of energy to basically cause like flash boiling of flesh than it is potentially to have a projectile do the same thing.
Yeah, or as we're using it right now, for anti-air stuff.
Yeah.
So laser weaponry is more likely to be a dangerous thing in the foreseeable in the future, if you believe this insane Chinese leak weapon that can just melt a man from a fucking mile away, which I don't believe for a second.
But yeah, I reckon it'd be more important for, anti-air stuff where you don't have travel time anymore, just, the time needed to heat the target enough to melt it.
So I don't think we'll ever have plasma and laser weapons as they are presented in Fallout be a thing. That's a thing that only exists in science fiction.
Fantasy. Yeah.
So
yeah. Not small arms, not man-portable.
Maybe in the distant future we could potentially have something like that. When we're a post-scarcity society, when energy is no longer an issue, when you have micro cold fusion that you can just fire away and just piss away the entirety of the energy production of China in one go. In that circumstance, then maybe it'd be possible. That seems it seems like a possibility in the future, but right now, in the foreseeable future, we are not going to have anything like that. Not even close to that. Like, we've barely gotten a ring of plasma to go, what was it, like 30 centimeters, and maintain its shape. And we've got big old lasers that can shoot down aircraft, but that's about it, aircraft. They're not shooting down people. So there's that. So that's my 2 bits on the matter.
Nice. Any last moment questions for me?
Not off the top of my head, Forrest. Do you have anything you want to ask BG?
Nothing else, I believe.
Well, in that circumstance, then, this has been Post-Apoc Horse Talk with your hosts Gant Aegis and BG, and our guest tonight has been Forrest McGilvray. And until next time, keep your eyes trained and your gun in its holster, because you never know what the wasteland brings. And good night.